Hi you guys, hello and welcome. I hope you guys are all doing very well. I'm a little heartbroken. I made a video on this plant. It was probably a 12-minute video, and then at the very last second it deleted. But this is a really cool plant and I'm willing to talk about it twice because I think it's that cool. This is Amsonia. It is a member of the Apocynaceae family, which is also known as the Dogbane family, close relative of oleander. And it's also known as blue dogbane as well as eastern bluestar and just regular common bluestar. So once again, this is Amsonia tabernaemontana. Its natural range extends through much of the United States, so you can find this as far south as northern Florida and Texas, and throughout Appalachia all the way up to even New Jersey. But this plant is robust and it's hardy and it's a real showstopper in the garden. This is the kind of plant that can even extend towards the harsher, more profound winters of northern United States. I'm talking North Dakota, Wisconsin, Minnesota even. So this is a cool perennial in that it attracts a whole host of natural enemies or natural predators of several different pests, such as a whole host of different varieties of mites. And one that I wanted to show you that's landed on it now is this green lacewing. I don't know if you can see it there. So that over there is a Neuroptera, and it's quite a voracious predator actually of many of our common insect pests in the garden. So Amsonia is a true showstopper in that it's an actual true blue. This plant, I think in my opinion, is even more blue than Agapanthus and Delphinium. It's very hard to find a perennial that is this blue in the garden. Amsonia, naturally speaking, will bloom in March and April in the southernmost extent of its range, talking Jacksonville, Florida, Mobile, Alabama. And then in the northernmost extent of its range, talking like Edison, New Jersey type area, it'll bloom more in June. And then here in British Columbia, where I live, and throughout the Pacific Northwest, it will bloom in May, depending on early spring trends. One big disclaimer I want to bring in this video is that all members of the Apocynaceae family are toxic to dogs. They have a milky latex sap that occurs when you break and lice their stems, so you definitely want to keep this away from dogs and little children as well, because it tends to compromise their immune system. Much like an oleander, it is toxic. Couple of ID features: they have this really interesting clump of 50 to 70 flowers. And they look like shooting stars. They're really quite cool. They almost remind me of like banana peels, but in blue. And they all have very prominent midribs and very prominent side veining. Ignore this is for the local birds, it's just a little bit of suet. Some varieties of Amsonia get to about 3 feet tall. This particular common variety gets to about 2 feet tall. It is herbaceous, so it will die all the way back in the winter. It's hardy to about negative 20 degrees, negative 25 degrees Celsius. Not entirely sure what that is in Fahrenheit, unfortunately. If you want to propagate this, you can propagate it at 2 different times of the year, right before it starts blooming, which is about March, April, and then later on in the season in about October. One thing that really surprises me about this plant is that it's not super horticulturally, commercially important yet. However, I can see that changing because it has a really beautiful ginkgo yellow color that it turns in September and October and November. So don't shear it back before it starts changing color, because it's really quite a beautiful plant in the fall and in the early winter. The seeds of these guys typically are viable. They tend to germinate quite quickly, actually, sometimes within a week. The seeds look very similar to those of like a butterfly flower. I can't remember the botanical name off the top of my head. But one thing I will say is it does take them a couple of years to bloom from seed. And it's kind of hard growing them from seedling up. So I recommend growing them from basal divisions. I recommend dividing these right when they're about 3-4 inches tall in the early spring, and then once again later you have an opportunity after they've bloomed. I recommend getting as big of a chunk as you can, at least 5 shoots. Kind of like dividing a perennial aster or an astilbe. You want to make sure you have a big clump just to ensure success. This plant doesn't mind drying out between waterings, but it definitely prefers an area that stays consistently moist. You're going to want to put this guy in full sun, ideally, if you want to get these beautiful blooms. They don't do well as a cut flower because they do tend to droop, much like the polemonium that I filmed in my other video. And remember, they have a latex-like sap, so you want to maybe wear gloves if you decide to cut this back, but it doesn't necessarily require that. These do well in established perennial borders alongside like peonies, delphiniums, hostas, etc., but really beautiful. I find in my garden this always does better in more alkaline areas. I don't know if that's a coincidence or not, but if you can amend with a bit of lime, this plant might appreciate it if you live in a more acidic soil base. So this is Amsonia. I think it's an incredible plant. I think it's really quite underused. It has a nice cascading form to it. It's true blue, not a heavy feeder at all. It does well in relatively poor soils too. So as always, I hope you guys have a fantastic day. Stay blessed. Let me know if there's anything else you want me to talk about. Really excited about my deciduous azaleas. Yeah, stay blessed and thanks.